Some weapons were considered too dangerous to use, not because they failed, but because the world realized what might happen if they worked exactly as intended. During the Cold War, scientists in the United States and Soviet Union designed machines so extreme they sounded like science fiction. A tank built to survive nuclear war, a backpack-sized atomic bomb, a biological weapon meant to spread disease across cities, and one classified project that planned to fly a nuclear reactor over enemy territory at Mach 3. Some were tested, some nearly entered service, and some terrified even the governments building them. But before we reach the most insane project of all, we begin with a Soviet tank that looked like it was built for the end of the world. Number 7. Object 279 Soviet Union, 1959 inches. The late 1950s. Military planners expected the next major war to begin with nuclear weapons. That raised a chilling question: how do tanks survive on an atomic battlefield? The Soviet answer was Object 279. At first glance, it looked unreal. Its hull resembled a flattened metal saucer, and instead of the usual 2 tracks, it had 4, spreading its immense weight across unstable, cratered terrain. This wasn't a tank for ordinary war. It was built for nuclear war. Object 279 featured extremely thick, curved armor designed to deflect blast waves. It was protected against chemical, biological, and radioactive contamination. Even its rounded shape helped prevent shock waves from flipping it over after a nearby detonation. Weighing nearly 60 tons, it carried a powerful 130mm gun capable of destroying almost anything of its era. It represented a terrifying vision: tanks advancing through radioactive battlefields after atomic explosions had already devastated the front lines. But reality intervened. The 4-track system proved complex and unreliable. Maintenance was difficult. Testing exposed mobility issues. Meanwhile, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev shifted doctrine toward missiles and lighter vehicles. Heavy tanks suddenly looked obsolete. Only one prototype survived. Today, Object 279 stands as a relic of a future humanity never experienced. But while the Soviets prepared for nuclear battlefields, the Americans experimented with something even stranger, because the next weapon turned animals into incendiary bombs. Number 6. Bat Bomb/Project X-Ray, United States, 1942. After Pearl Harbor, an American dentist named Lytle Adams proposed an unusual idea: use bats to burn Japanese cities from the inside. And incredibly, the U.S. government approved it. Project X-Ray involved bomb-shaped canisters carrying over 1,000 hibernating Mexican free-tailed bats. Each bat was fitted with a tiny timed incendiary device. Dropped at dawn, the container would open mid-air. The bats would scatter into rooftops and attics, then the timers would ignite, starting thousands of fires at once. At the time, many Japanese cities were built largely from wood and paper. Planners believed the bats could cause widespread firestorms more efficiently than conventional bombing. Disturbingly, early tests suggested it might work, but controlling thousands of live animals attached to explosives proved unpredictable. In one test, armed bats escaped and burned part of a U.S. airfield. Even during wartime, the concept seemed absurd. By 1944, it was canceled, overshadowed by something far more powerful: the atomic bomb. But the Cold War pushed weapons development even further, because the next system turned nuclear destruction into artillery fire. Number 5. M65 Atomic Annie, United States, 1953. As nuclear weapons became smaller, a new possibility emerged: what if atomic bombs could be fired like regular shells? The answer was the M65 atomic cannon, Atomic Annie. Stretching 85 feet long and weighing over 170,000 pounds, it fired the W-9 nuclear shell with power comparable to Hiroshima. A single artillery crew could launch a nuclear explosion more than 20 miles away. In 1953, during Operation Upshot Knothole, the M65 fired a live nuclear shell in the Grable test. A mushroom cloud rose over the Nevada desert, the only time the U.S. ever fired a live nuclear artillery round. Nuclear war had become tactical, mobile, immediate, but the cannon was massive and difficult to transport. As missile technology advanced, it quickly became obsolete. By the early 1960s, Atomic Annie was withdrawn, yet planners were already thinking smaller, much smaller, because the next nuclear weapon could fit in a backpack. Number 4. Special Atomic Demolition Munition, United States, 1960. STO counter a potential Soviet invasion of Europe. The U.S. developed the Special Atomic Demolition Munition, SADM, the backpack nuke. Designed for special forces, it could be carried behind enemy lines and placed near bridges, tunnels, dams, or ports, then detonated to destroy critical infrastructure. Some versions used the W-54 warhead, one of the smallest U.S. nuclear weapons ever built. But small was relative. With a yield approaching 1 kiloton, it could devastate strategic targets. The most chilling part? The soldiers deploying it might not survive. Missions required precise timing for escape. One delay could mean death in their own nuclear blast. Hundreds were reportedly deployed during the Cold War. None were ever used. As fears of escalation and terrorism grew, they were dismantled. But the next weapon didn't rely on explosions. It weaponized disease. Number 3. E-120 Biological Cluster Bomblet. United States. Early 1960s, the E-120 was developed under the U.S. Offensive Biological Warfare Program. Instead of destroying buildings, it aimed to spread infection. Delivered as a cluster munition, it could disperse infectious agents, such as tularemia, across wide areas. The disease can cause severe fever, pneumonia, and potentially death if untreated. The horror wasn't immediate destruction. It was silent spread. An outbreak might resemble a natural epidemic. Hospitals could be overwhelmed before officials realized it was an attack. Panic would spread faster than the pathogen itself. Cold War planners understood the psychological impact. Fortunately, in 1969, President Richard Nixon ended the U.S. offensive biological weapons program. Stockpiles were destroyed, and projects like the E-120 were shut down. But while biological warfare faded, nuclear weapons reached unimaginable scale, because the next device became the most powerful bomb ever detonated. Number 2. Tsar Bomba. Soviet Union, 1961. On October 30th, 1961, the Soviet Union detonated Tsar Bomba. Yield, approximately 50 megatons, more than 3,000 times Hiroshima. The fireball stretched for kilometers. The mushroom cloud climbed into the upper atmosphere. Shockwaves shattered windows hundreds of miles away, and instruments worldwide detected it. Weighing 27 tons and nearly 8 meters long, it required a specially modified Tu-95 bomber. A parachute slowed its descent so the crew could escape, though survival wasn't guaranteed. Originally, scientists considered a 100 megaton version but reduced it to limit fallout. Militarily, it was almost useless, too heavy, too destructive, too impractical. Tsar Bomba was a message, a demonstration of how far the arms race had escalated. No comparable bomb was ever deployed, but one final project may have been even more disturbing, because it wasn't designed for a single explosion. It was designed for continuous radioactive devastation. Number 1. Project Pluto /SLAM. United States, 1957-1964. Project Pluto proposed a nuclear-powered cruise missile called SLAM, Supersonic Low-Altitude Missile. It would fly at Mach 3, carrying multiple hydrogen bombs across enemy territory. But its true horror was its engine, a nuclear ramjet. Air would pass directly through an unshielded reactor operating at extreme temperatures. The result, a missile with enormous range, flying low and fast, difficult to intercept. It could drop thermonuclear weapons along its path, and even before doing that, it would be deadly. The engine would spray radioactive exhaust across everything below. Entire regions could be contaminated simply by its flight. Some later called it a flying Chernobyl, and the technology worked. By 1964, full-power reactor tests proved it was feasible, but testing it safely seemed nearly impossible. Fallout risks were enormous. Meanwhile, intercontinental ballistic missiles were becoming more practical. Project Pluto was canceled. No SLAM missile ever flew, but it revealed something deeply unsettling about the Cold War. Humanity had reached a point where it could imagine weapons so destructive, even governments hesitated to build them. These machines were designed in secret labs and remote test sites across the world. Some for nuclear battlefields, some for biological warfare. Some so extreme they still feel fictional, but they were real, and behind every one of them was the same reality: human beings preparing for wars they hoped would never come. If you want more dark, forgotten, and unbelievable military stories, subscribe to X Military, and comment below which weapon do you think was the most terrifying.